Welcome, everybody, back to Two Dudes Views. This week, we're talking about state income tax. Is it good? Is it bad? Or does it even matter to you? This is a topic that I have found I am very uneducated, but very passionate about. And so, Matt and I are going to kind of talk through some of the pros and cons of what state income tax pays for, what it helps with, and what the elimination of it could cause. And this is all comes from a article that Marie Evans, who's a writer for the Daily Oklahoman, wrote. It was published on January 29th, 2025. It's about Governor Stitt renewing a call to eventually eliminate our state income tax. And so we're right now, I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're at 4.75% is our state income tax for anyone that makes over $7,200 a year. And so if you make over that amount, you're taxed 4.75% on that per gross. And so what we're going to talk about this week is uh, the the fact of being taxed and then paying taxes, and then where do the taxes go? And is Governor Stitt's call the right call for the state? Is it the wrong call for the state? Where do we sit? And really, the facts are kind of some's in the data, some's in the we don't really know. Other states have proven it works. Other states have not even tried. We're part of the states that have not even tried. And so, Matt, I want to share a bunch of stuff. We've kind of been chatting about this, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and dive in, just kind of share some information around state income tax and kind of what it currently pays for and why it is important.
Yeah, and I think you were looking up what it actually pays for. So, and really, kind of the questions around Quinton hit right on it. So, our Governor Stitt, has proposed a 0.5% decrease in the state income tax, and he's also put out a challenge that he wants to see a plan to move that to zero. Right, and I don't know how many years in a row now he's asked for this, and it hasn't happened. But it's certainly a constant request of his. And again, as the new Congress, as the new state legislature gets ready to start its new session, he's renewing that call, and again for a 0.5% decrease with a plan to go to zero. And we just kind of wanted to talk about, hey, if you tell me lower taxes, if you tell anyone lower taxes, I think the immediate response is heck yes, yeah. I don't want to pay any. I want it lower, and I want it zero. But when you start looking at it, I think any of us would be crazy to believe that, if we lower or remove one tax, our our elected officials would be extremely excited to, lower or reduce spending. I think on the contrary, it's where do we make up that revenue
Yeah,
somewhere else? And you know what? It's probably going to be a combination of the two. We can find some
yeah.
places to reduce spending, which I think we would all be happy about. I think each of us would say that we know how to spend our money smarter than the government does. And, you know, time and time again, I think that's proven. Quinton, I think you had a good quote. I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was the governor, something about
Oh yeah, Governor Stitt, who's quoted in this article in Oklahoma by Mary Evans, says government will spend every dime that you give them. There's never a shortage of good ideas. People come to you every year and they want more. If you give them more taxpayer money, look how much more good they think they can do, but there has to be a limit on it. And he's right. Everyone thinks they can do great with money until they need more of it and they need
you know
more of
what?
it.
And I'm not going to say that any proposal or any bill or any idea anyone has, that it doesn't come with the best intentions, right? So there's probably a whole lot of truth that, everyone has got a great idea on how to spend someone else's money, right? And that's
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no. And I was like, and that's kind of the whole crux of our argument here is like, one, do we believe that our government can spend our money better, right? Or can we all get together and believe that government can and should be more efficient, and instead of asking us for more of our money, right? How can the government do better or be more efficient with less of our money? And I think if we're ever going to see an income tax reduction that actually leaves more money in our pocket and doesn't tax us elsewhere, that's exactly what we're going to have to see, right? Because again, none of us want to pay taxes, but we also don't want to see less services, right? If
Yeah,
our house is on fire, we want the fire truck to show up. If a burglar breaks in, we probably would like some help from the police, right? There's certain
right.
things that we've come to expect and really need help with. And a lot of the times, and you had a real good list, and I want you to read it off, but a lot of the services that we've come to rely on are, at least in our state of Oklahoma, are funded by the in income tax.
Yeah, it just says each state is responsible for raising revenue through taxes, which are then used to fund various programs. The most common uses of state taxes, and this is agnostic of a state, so this is most common, are education, healthcare, transportation, corrections, and low income assistance. And so these are basic core fundamental things to every state. We hear all these arguments every year. Education needs reformed. Healthcare needs reform. We heard this at the national level this year in the inauguration and in some of the bills and executive orders being passed. Transportation. Oklahoma has the worst roads. We hear that all the time. People say, I know when I leave and come into Oklahoma because the size, my car immediately jerks to left or right because the pothole that I just hit
Yeah,
and
and I don't know,
corrections.
I don't know where we rank currently, but at least historically, we've ranked, near or close to the bottom in teacher pay. I know that we've, recently increased that, so maybe we've moved up the rankings a bit, but I still think we're probably in the lower quartile there.
In 2022-23, we ranked 43rd in the nation.
In total teacher pay.
Yep, for
All right,
average
so
teacher pay.
average teacher pay, we're 43rd in the nation. Let's say that income tax and part of the lottery money, I don't think we're all quite sure where all of that money goes, but so by reducing the income tax by 0.5% or all the way to zero, how do we pay teachers and fund education when we're already at or near the bottom? these
Right.
these are some of the questions that our legislators are going to have to figure out if they even entertain this notion of lowering the income tax.
Yeah, and the article that by Murray Evans is a great article because he talks about both of those aspects. And yes, Governor Stitt offered a 0.5% cut to go down to 4.25. And I think the slogan is zero point 0.5 with the path to zero. That's kind of the slogan. And so the way income taxes work, and this is just my rudimentary way, is I make a paycheck that I'm taxed on by the state and the federal government. I then go to Walmart here in Ada and I buy goods that I'm now taxed on with the taxed income. So I already have lesser income than I'm grossing, and I'm taxed on the items that I'm buying, minus the grocery tax, which, by the way, the state of Oklahoma did eliminate last year in its largest tax cut in state history, and was successful. And then so then I pay for a house here in Oklahoma with my tax income, and I am taxed for my property that I own that I'll perpetually always be taxed on. And so there is this concept of my income's taxed, my goods are taxed, my property's taxed. I'm taxed everywhere I turn around, and that's really kind of, I think, the way Governor Stitt and the proponents for this are approaching it is put more money in Oklahomans' pockets. They'll choose what goods they want to buy, and they'll be fine with raising sales tax if it goes from and here in Pontotoc County, we're at 10%. I think it's like 9.97. It's one of the highest county sales taxes, period. Um, and you really do as a consumer, you have to say, am I okay with 15% sales tax? But if I'm getting back 5% on my check and I'm choosing what I'm buying, I know personally I'm saying, yeah, I'd much rather go to a sales tax, higher sales tax and no income tax. That's me personally. Um, and so, yeah, I don't want to see education, healthcare fail, but there's a little bit of like, I'm already seeing it not do well with millions of dollars in the budget be spent, and they keep asking for more. And so, that's a little bit of my personal feelings. And I told Matt this may be one that I kind of get on a little bit of a soapbox because you're taxed here, you're taxed here, you're taxed here, and then you're told all this money goes to benefit people, but then there's like, oh, but you need to pay more. And then I shared this with Matt today. And then, oh, by the way, at the end of the year, you may or may not have paid the right amount of taxes. So now you have to tell the state of Oklahoma what you made over the year. They know the exact amount. You need to guess. And if you don't get it right, they can put you in jail for tax evasion or for not paying the right amount of taxes. So eliminating state income tax not only helps the consumer, but let's be honest, it helps the small business owner too. When they can just pay someone and $10 an hour means $10 an hour, that eliminates a lot of taxes they don't have to pay. Like it would help our employer not pay taxes on income. And so businesses would thrive in Oklahoma. And Matt mentioned Meta's thinking about reincorporating Texas. Why? Because if all their employees or their employee pay base is in Texas, they don't have to pay state income tax through
Yeah,
Texas.
and hey,
So
I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not. I just read an article today, but you know what? We saw what Tesla, all of Elon Musk and his businesses have recently went to Texas.
yeah,
Several have went to Texas, but I did see an article earlier today, and we're recording this on January 31st, that there is a there are rumors at least that Meta is thinking about reincorporating in Texas.
yeah. And so I'll hop off my soapbox, but for the average Oklahoman, I think this is a move in the right direction because it puts more money in the pockets of the people, to Matt's point, that I feel like can make the right decisions. I'm going to choose whether I want to pay 15% sales tax on a box of Twinkies or a set of tires. That's my choice as a consumer and as an Oklahoman. And I think it gives the people more an empowerment to say, I'm choosing to make this choice instead of just taking a chunk out without even realizing. I think most people, taxes, what they say, the two things are certain in life, death and taxes. We don't have to make taxes certain. We can make them, something that we participate in. And I think there'd be less grievance around taxes if I'm participating in it versus just being stripped out of my income. So,
Well, yeah, no,
but
and I agree with that, and probably the fact that, and you talked about it a little bit already, but kind of the multi layers of taxes, right? So I'm taxed at the national level on income, and then at the state level on income, and then I'm taxed to drive down the street when I buy my car tag, and then again the money that's left over is taxed when I go buy groceries or whatever at the store. So it's like, how many times can you tax a dollar of my of of my earnings? And then it's just tough to even think about. And then when we look and decide whether we believe that government's running efficiently or not, and it's easy to say that it's not, but it it is or it isn't, right? But when you see the nightly news, depending on the slant of your political motivation, the government's not doing well if that party's not in power, right? But if that party is in power, it's doing pretty good. So
yeah,
it's just it's just kind of difficult to think about. But I did create kind of a pros and a cons list, and when Quinton was giving his sermon, he hit most of my pros. So we'll let Quinton stay on the set on the pro side of this argument. Get rid of the stinking income tax, but I'll kind of go over them real quick, and then we can cuss and discuss if there's anything more we want to say about it. But we talked about it, higher take home pay, right? I mean, they're not lopping 4.5, 4.75% off the top. I would say, especially in this period of time when we talk about consumer stress and financial issues, inflation's high, interest rates are high. I mean, if you get to keep 5% more in your pocket every paycheck, that's probably a good thing for most families today. Economic growth and business attraction, we talked about in Texas is a big one we hear about a lot. No income tax. We hear a lot about a businesses moving to Texas to kind of that business attraction, economic growth. I think Governor Stitt's kind of trying to mirror Oklahoma off of that same vision, right? We're open for businesses. Come here. Also put retiree friendly environment, right? Because again, if you do get rid of an income tax, a lot of retirees are on that fixed income. They may or may not have, they may be doing the old retirement account, rule. I can only withdraw X amount per year. I've got a nest egg of X. I can only take out Y. It's got the last. I'm moving to a state that's not going to tax that as much. And then, right, we're going to kind of get into it on the cons. If you come up with higher sales tax, so to speak, because of you've got no income tax, if you can attract more wealthier retirees to your state, they're going to be buying more and consuming more. So then you're going to potentially get more of that sales tax revenue, and you're going to generate kind of migration into the state of people that have the money to spend when you do have a higher sales tax. So that's a positive. Also wrote down simpler tax filings, right? If there's no income tax, I don't have to worry about my state taxes as much because there wasn't any tax to pay, right? So I don't have to calculate state income tax. And then Quinton talked about this one too. I put down a consumption-based tax revenue model. So instead of just taxing my work product, right? Taxing what
Mhm.
I do for a living, you're taxing me based on what I consume. And personally, I think that's a great way to do it. And that may be a way I'm going to maybe kind of get political in my language, but not necessarily meaning to. Maybe that is the Green New Deal, right? I, our consumption as, humans contributes to a lot of the, pollution, recycle, all the things we're talking about in terms of fossil fuels and plastics in the ocean and all these types of issues that really get a bad rap in the world, right? Because we've come about trying to lower or improve these things based on government regulation. How about let the free market and the capitalist system work in our
Yeah.
favor? If you want to buy a Coke Zero in a plastic bottle that can't be recycled, guess what? $2 extra. And just let the people decide, right?
Yeah.
If you want to if you want to burn gasoline that's going to spit the most carbon particulates into the air, great, you can do it. That's $1 extra for you.
Think
That's a consumption-based tax revenue model that can then generate taxes to take the place of what would have been coming off the top of your income.
you almost got into an old Art Williams speech. Super duper, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, and the pros, you could say pros and cons, and Matt will get into the cons list, and there are cons to it, but when we are based off of a capitalistic society, I just don't see where more money in people's pockets with their choice to spend it where it's going ever hurts. And I will agree with Governor Stitt. The government will spend every dime and ask for more while they're spending it as long as we exist. And so I'm a huge proponent of let's eliminate it and put it elsewhere. And so, Matt, go ahead and share your cons because this is a list, even we were chatting a little bit before that can catch you off guard because there are consequences. And some of this we may not see in our lifetime, but the elimination of income tax may affect our kids and our grandkids. And we don't want to be a generation. It's like, well, we'll be dead before anything happens. That's not being a good steward of the American dream or the Oklahoma promise. So,
Yeah, and earlier I kind of went over these with Quentin. He wanted to argue about every single one of them. So hopefully I got lot of the venom out early. So we'll see how
I
this
wouldn't say
goes.
venom, I would say truth and justice.
Truth and justice. But so first on my cons list, I've got higher sales tax and property taxes because again, I don't believe that we can lower and or reduce the income tax to zero and not make up those revenue shortfalls elsewhere. One, we can hope the government will spend less and the money that it does spend can be spent more efficiently so it needs less, but such a large piece of the revenue, we have to assume that that's going to be made up elsewhere. And again, we can see it in Texas and Florida, to name two examples, no income tax states, but they do make that up because they have higher sales tax and they've got higher property taxes.
Yeah. And you have to be, as a citizen, willing to compromise. You can't have a utopia that you make all this money and there's never any that goes out to help the greater good. That's not what a state, community, and or country can survive off of. It just not the basis of it. So there is compromise. Even I wouldn't even consider that a con, really. I would consider that a thinking point of like which one would you prefer? I definitely, you all now know exactly where I sit. So
Yeah, well, con in terms of you're not completely getting rid of the taxes, right? It's just switching around on it, right?
yeah,
We're gonna do the switcheroo. We're gonna let you keep it a little bit longer. Hope you don't spend it all, and we're just gonna get it later.
right.
So, and the second con I've
And,
got,
and, and real
yeah,
quick,
go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. As you know, we talked about is there is also a worry of and this you may, if you're going to get into this point, stop me, but basing on sales tax is not everybody buys the same thing. Where basing on income tax, they can look at our workforce and kind of forecast out what taxes are going to be. They know wages, they know how many people in the state of Oklahoma are going to work. Sales, you don't know that people are going to go buy certain amounts of things at certain prices at a certain tax. So it's really hard to budget when you don't know how much is coming in.
Yeah, no, and that was another con on the list. I put budget
Yeah,
volatility,
that
right?
was the one.
Because
Yeah. So
again, we can go back just as recent to the COVID pandemic, and I've got an example here of the state of Nevada, right? No income tax, extremely reliant on tourism and consumption. COVID-19 pandemic hit, crushed Nevada's revenue, right? They still have budget deficits today that were created during that pandemic because the world shut down, right? No one was going gambling on the strip. They relied on that. Their budget was built with the expectation that that money would continue coming in.
yeah,
So when you've got a budget that's based upon a majority of your taxes coming through consumption or through sales tax, any economic downturn can have quick negative consequences on the money available for the state.
yeah. And for Oklahoma, I mean, we're just one or two really good tornadoes away from devastating a whole. I mean, if Bricktown got hit by a tornado or by any other natural disaster, Oklahoma City is, you know, crippled for lack of a better term and has to rebuild with what money if we're based off sales tax. So there are cons and worries that go into being a state that is high in natural disasters and based
Mhm.
on a really in an inability to forecast out how do we rebuild and repay for things if we're
Yep.
based off of consumption.
And earlier, I think Quentin mentioned education and healthcare
Yeah.
spending. That's kind of another potential con here. Limited public services, right? When the income tax goes a long way in funding two of those measures, that again, I think that Quentin mentioned that Oklahoma was already relatively low on. How do those services get funded in a future state when there is no income tax?
Yeah, and we already hear stories about people who don't take promotions or jobs to stay under the income requirement for sooner care because they have children that they, quite frankly, their promotion or raise won't pay for the insurance to make up for sooner care. Does sooner care's uh, amount come down? Does it, instead of being at like say 25,000 a year, does it come down to 15 and eliminate, 60% of the participants? And then we see a mass of people quitting jobs to fall beneath that. So there are some things that one domino falls, the rest falls, and you've created kind of a catastrophe, an economical disaster within your state.
Mhm. Another con I've got listed here, increased cost of living in some areas. So that's kind of mainly focused on property taxes, right? So if we try to offset some lost revenue from removing the income tax and we increase property taxes, maybe now you can't afford to live in that neighborhood that you've been eyeballing. I might be able to afford the house and the mortgage, but there's no way I can pay that property tax that's going to be due every year.
Yeah, and as a school board member, we get a cut of the property tax, and so we rely on that money. Well, who else is getting into that piece of the pie, and is schools getting cut out for healthcare, corrections, transportation, and so does one service suffer for another one, so it doesn't hurt the Oklahoma people, but then it hurts the services. So
Yeah, and it's not only the property taxes going up. How about, so we talked about, you know, more friendly taxation, retirees. So the heck with the property taxes. What about just property prices in general going up if you do get a migration of folks, right? So say all the surrounding states do have income tax. You've created a really nice environment now. More people begin to migrate into the state. What's that going to do to property, or not property taxes, but property values,
yeah.
housing prices? So you may end up pricing everyone in the state out of the market if you get an influx of, you know, higher income individuals coming from highly taxed states coming in.
Hey,
There's
and
a real potential there to increase those property values.
we're already
But
seeing
again,
that.
right? It's a double freaking whammy. If your property value goes up, guess what? So do your
Those
property
taxes, yeah,
taxes.
and your insurance. So, and we're already seeing that. We're seeing homes sit on the market for 90, 120, 180 days that are well overpriced. But because COVID set that standard, people are asking here in Ada, Oklahoma, for $500,000. These aren't $500,000 homes. In Nichols Hills, they would be, or up in
Mhm.
Edmond, but not in Ada, Oklahoma. They're not a 250, $300,000 home. But because that market was created and perpetuated for 2 or 3 years, it's already pricing Oklahomans out of
Yep.
their own homes. And the migration, just because of our more conservative views and ways of life, are drawing people who have higher wages are coming into our state. And so, yeah, to your point, that does create a kind of a chokehold on the Oklahoma people that we could potentially put ourselves in a, I think of a Chinese finger trap. Isn't that what those were, where you can't pull yourself out of the mess you've been put in?
You got in, but you can't get out, right? So
Yeah.
I saved this last con for last because it really triggered Quentin earlier, but regressive taxation, right? So the income tax is basically graduated. The percents are relatively the same, but they kind of go up as you make more income. So you pay a little higher percent based upon a level or amount of income you make. If we move to more heavily into a sales tax or only sales tax, that sales tax doesn't know how much you make a year, so everyone pays the same amount. So, someone making $20,000 a year, they've got that same tax bill when they come out of the super Walmart than someone that makes $1 million a year. We can argue whether that's fair or not, but I think we all can agree that that lower income person probably has less margin of error and they've got less money that can be used to pay for taxes, right? They may need to buy an extra carton of eggs that now they can't afford because the sales tax is higher.
Yeah, I got my kind of soapbox out earlier, so Matt helped me with that. But yeah, in my world, that I don't care if I make 100,000 and you make 50,000, we pay the same for the same product. We're choosing both to buy it. Um, I think it creates competition in the workforce. I think it creates people that want to go work and go do things and go get promotions, and that's what capitalism should create. It should create a way in which you strive to earn more and create more. And I think sometimes taxes create that. Like I can't help but, and honestly, there are sometimes I don't want to be put in a higher tax bracket because you're just going to take more. And so I've actually gotten promotions and raises that I got less money every 2 weeks. And that nothing will demoralize you to get more responsibility and more headache for less money. That's frustrating. So yeah, progressive taxation. It's real, it happens, but in a perfect world, I think, yeah, if I make six figures, seven figures, and you make 25, 30,000, we pay the same thing for a carton of eggs, and so be it. But
Says,
but I'll argue you're probably on some of the assistance that the state tax is paying for. So
but I think we can then go back up to the con we previously talked about, limited public services. So they may have been on that assistance, but now there is none
now it's been
because we
cut
got.
because the
But
income
you know what?
threshold.
Whether you whether you agree with it, right? Whether you don't, I think it is true, right? Sales tax disproportionately affects lower income residents,
Yeah,
lower income people who then have to spend a greater portion of their income on any goods that are taxable, right? And I say taxable goods because I say groceries, but we just got rid of the grocery tax, so then I can't say that. So, again, you're just spending a higher portion of your income on taxable goods, and those taxes have increased.
yeah.
That
Hey,
is
and
a negative if you're that person.
right. And honestly, we bring this topic up because it's news for Oklahomans. We are about being educated in our local politics and local legislation. This is something our governor has put in. Last year, I believe, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that it said that it made it through the House and approved through the House, and the
Yep.
Senate Majority Leader would not bring it to vote because he disagreed with it. Treats out now. There's a new Senate Pro Tem who's going to bring it to vote. I think he's for it. So this will probably be heard, be put into place. And there's a lot of push for eliminating state tax right now in Congress. So this is something that as Oklahomans, we should be educating ourselves on because all those cons we just listed, they will either negatively or passively affect us potentially in the next 5, 10 to 15 years. And we're all going to hopefully live in that time span. So that's what this channel is about. That's what Matt and I's passion is about, is educating people on what's going on in your city, state, and local government, obviously national. And to be honest, Trump has also kind of pitched the same kind of thing at the federal level. Get rid of federal income tax. And so this isn't a new concept. Income tax has always been questioned, has always been, does it do what it needs to do? That's not really what we're asking here. We're just positioning the facts. Governor Stitt has put in something new. If you want the article, it's at the Daily Oklahoman. Murray Evans wrote it. You can look for it. honestly, if you want really quality news about what's going on in Oklahoma politics, the Daily Oklahoman is a great source to turn to. They're not a sponsor yet. If they want to, be glad to have them. But Matt, I don't know if you have any closing comments, but that's just
Certainly,
kind of mine.
certainly sounds like a commercial there, doesn't it? But no, hey, I will only say this is intriguing. It's interesting. Uh, Oklahoma's the House and the Senate and the governor are all Republicans. This has a really good chance of getting a lot of attention and getting pushed through. I wanted to focus on those pros and cons because government's really easy to grow and it's really hard to shrink. So it's going to be interesting if we do get any reduction and or even a path and a plan to go to zero. Does government shrink or do they just take it out of our pocket later, right? Is this a switcheroo? Is it less spending, more efficient spending? Is it a little bit of both? It's going
Right.
to be interesting on, how all of this is put together if and when, some version of it does get through.
Yeah, because remember, if you vote for it and put it into law, you can't sue them for bait and switch. You agreed to it. So, and honestly, this probably will go before the Congress, but legislation will probably be voted on. State questions, things like that will come down the pipe. So you need to be informed. So, Matt, anything else before we head out?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Y'all have a great week.